I've never hated anyone as much as I hated Rob Reiner. These weren't the words of a bitter stranger or a feuding rival. They came from Carroll O'Connor, the man who made America laugh every week on one of television's most groundbreaking shows. But behind those iconic performances lay a story darker and more complex than anyone could have imagined. This is the untold truth about the legend who brought Archie Bunker to life. When you think of classic American television, certain faces immediately come to mind. Carroll O'Connor is undoubtedly one of them. The man who embodied Archie Bunker didn't just play a character, he held up a mirror to an entire generation, forcing America to confront its prejudices, its fears, and its changing identity. But the man behind that legendary performance? His real life was filled with struggles that would break most people. From the heartbreak of losing his only son to the shocking animosity he harbored toward his most famous co-star, Carroll O'Connor's story is one of brilliance shadowed by tragedy. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the actor who changed television forever, revealing the man very few people truly knew. Carroll O'Connor didn't start life destined for stardom. Born in the Bronx on August 2, 1924, young John Carroll O'Connor grew up in an Irish-American household where stories mattered, education was revered, and hard work was the only currency that truly counted. His childhood unfolded during the Great Depression, and those years of economic devastation carved something deep into his character, an understanding of struggle, an awareness of class divisions, and a keen eye for how different people navigate hardship differently. These weren't just abstract lessons, they became the foundation for every character he would later bring to life, especially Archie Bunker, that complicated everyman who would make him a household name decades later. Carroll's path to acting was anything but straightforward. He pursued higher education at Wake Forest University and later at the University of Montana, immersing himself deeply in academics with genuine passion. But then, World War II interrupted everything. Like millions of young men, Carroll answered the call, serving in the United States Merchant Marine. Those years at sea exposed him to humanity in its rawest form, resilience under pressure, the complexity of human behavior, the thin line between courage and survival. When the war ended, Carroll returned to finish his education, ultimately earning a degree in English. Here was a man who loved language, who understood the power of words and the rhythm of human expression. Initially, he thought his future lay in teaching, sharing his love of literature with students. But something else was calling to him, something he couldn't quite ignore. In a bold move that would shape his entire future, Carroll packed up and moved to Ireland in the 1950s. At the University College Dublin, he didn't just study, he transformed. The rich theatrical tradition of Ireland, the depth of its storytelling culture, the raw emotion of its stage performances, it all awakened something in him. He began appearing in stage productions, honing his craft night after night, learning to embody characters with a depth that went beyond mere performance. When Carroll finally returned to America, he was no longer just a teacher with an interest in drama. He was an actor, fully committed to his craft, ready to fight for every role and prove himself in an industry that chewed up and spat out countless dreamers. The 1960s were Carroll's wilderness years. He took every job he could get. Guest appearances on television shows, small supporting roles in Hollywood films. If you were paying attention, you might have spotted him in Cleopatra in 1963, navigating the chaos of that infamous production. Or perhaps you caught him in What Did You Do in the War, Daddy in 1966, or Point Blank in 1967. These roles showcased his incredible range. He could do serious drama that left you breathless. He could deliver comedy with perfect timing. But despite his obvious talent, despite his dedication, that one defining role remained frustratingly out of reach. Carroll was approaching 50, and in Hollywood, that's when most actors start accepting that their biggest dreams might never materialize. And then, everything changed.
In 1971, All in the Family premiered, and television would never be the same. Carroll O'Connor took on the role of Archie Bunker, a working-class man from Queens whose outdated views and stubborn prejudices were about to spark a national conversation. Now, here's what made Carroll's performance so extraordinary. He didn't play Archie as a villain. Many actors would have taken the easy route, turning the character into a one-dimensional bigot that audiences could simply dismiss and mock. But Carroll understood something deeper. He knew that to really challenge America, Archie had to be real. He had to be someone's uncle, someone's neighbor, someone's father. So Carroll infused Archie with vulnerability. He showed the fear beneath the anger, the confusion beneath the prejudice, the humanity beneath the harsh words. Archie was a product of his time, struggling to make sense of a world that was changing faster than he could adapt. And somehow, impossibly, Carroll made audiences simultaneously laugh at Archie's ignorance and recognize him as painfully, undeniably human. All in the Family didn't just push boundaries, it demolished them. Week after week, the show tackled subjects that had been considered absolutely off-limits for primetime television: racism, women's liberation, the Vietnam War, economic inequality, abortion, homosexuality, religious hypocrisy. These weren't gentle discussions. These were raw, uncomfortable, often explosive confrontations that happened in Archie's living room, and by extension, in living rooms across America. The show forced families to talk about things they'd been avoiding, to confront beliefs they'd never questioned, to see themselves reflected in ways that were sometimes flattering and often deeply unsettling. And Carroll was at the center of it all, delivering performance after performance that earned him 4 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. Think about that. A comedy series that made people laugh and cry and think and argue all within the same 22 minutes. All in the Family became more than just a hit show. It became a cultural touchstone, a shared experience that defined an era. People organized their schedules around it. They debated the episodes at work the next day. They saw themselves or their relatives in these characters, and that recognition was both entertaining and deeply confrontational. Carroll continued playing Archie in the spin-off Archie Bunker's Place from 1979 to 1983, extending the character's evolution and proving that Archie and Carroll's brilliant portrayal could grow and change even as certain core elements remained stubbornly fixed. But Carroll O'Connor was never going to be defined by just one role, no matter how iconic. In the late 1980s, Carroll did something remarkable. He completely reinvented himself. In the television adaptation of In the Heat of the Night, which ran from 1988 to 1995, he took on the role of Chief Bill Gillespie, a character who couldn't have been more different from Archie Bunker. Gillespie was thoughtful, whereas Archie was reactive. He was evolving and learning, while Archie often remained rigid. As a police chief in a small Mississippi town navigating racial tensions and complex crimes, Gillespie represented a kind of hope. The possibility that people can grow, can learn, can become better versions of themselves. And Carroll didn't just act in the series, he produced it, he wrote for it, he shaped it with the same passion and intelligence he'd brought to everything else in his career. This was Carroll O'Connor, the artist, the storyteller, the creator, not just an actor inhabiting someone else's vision, but a force shaping the narrative itself.
In 1962, while Carroll was in Rome working on the chaotic, extravagant production of Cleopatra, he and his wife Nancy made a decision that would forever change their lives. They adopted a 6-month-old baby boy and named him Hugh, a name carrying profound significance, chosen to honor Carroll's brother who had tragically died just a year earlier. This wasn't just about expanding their family. This was about healing, about remembrance, about giving love in the face of loss. That little boy would grow up surrounded by the world of television and film, watching his father become one of the most recognizable faces in America. As Hugh grew older, Carroll tried to share his world with his son. At 17, Hugh worked as a courier on the set of Archie Bunker's Place. It was a modest position, but for Carroll, it represented something important. A chance to bring his son into his professional life, to teach him the discipline and responsibility required in the entertainment industry. Later, when Carroll was working on In the Heat of the Night, he took an even more significant step. He created a character specifically for Hugh, Officer Lonnie Jameson. This wasn't just nepotism or a favor. This was a father trying to open doors for his son, trying to give him opportunities to express himself creatively under the protective guidance of someone who understood the industry's challenges and pitfalls. Carroll was trying to build something with Hugh, a shared passion, a professional connection, a bond that went beyond typical father-son relationships. But behind the scenes, Hugh was fighting a battle that Carroll couldn't win for him. Drug addiction had its grip on the young man, and despite all of Carroll's success, all his connections, all his love, he couldn't save his son from this demon. On March 28, 1995, that battle ended in the most devastating way possible. Hugh O'Connor died by suicide, ending his suffering but beginning a new kind of agony for his father. The loss of a child is a pain that defies description. Many people would have been destroyed by such tragedy, retreating from public life to grieve in private. But Carroll O'Connor chose a different path. He channeled his unbearable grief into action, into advocacy, into a mission that might save other families from experiencing what he'd endured. He appeared in public service announcements for the Partnership for a Drug-Free America, using his fame and his personal story to educate people about the devastating reality of drug addiction. He spoke openly about Hugh's struggles, stripping away any shame or stigma, making it clear that addiction doesn't discriminate. It can touch anyone, from any family, regardless of success or love or good intentions. For the rest of his life, Carroll dedicated himself to this cause. Every interview, every public appearance became an opportunity to talk about addiction, about prevention, about the importance of intervention and support. His son's death gave him a new purpose, transforming personal tragedy into a legacy of compassion and awareness that would help countless families facing similar battles.
Now we come to the revelation that shocked Hollywood. Carroll O'Connor's intense, sustained hatred of Rob Reiner, his co-star on All in the Family. This wasn't professional rivalry or creative disagreement. This was personal, deep, and according to Carroll, absolutely consuming. "I've never hated anyone as much as I hated Rob Reiner," Carroll stated bluntly in interviews, and he wasn't being dramatic for effect. He meant every word. This wasn't a momentary frustration or a bad day on set. This was years of accumulated animosity, a profound dislike that colored his entire experience on one of television's most successful shows. What created such intense hatred between two actors playing father and son-in-law? According to Carroll, it started with what he perceived as Rob's fundamental arrogance. Rob always thought he was smarter than everyone else, that he had some moral high ground just because he played the liberal son, Carroll explained. And for someone like Carroll, intensely proud of his craft, deeply invested in the authenticity of his performances, protective of his artistic interpretation, Rob's self-assuredness felt like a constant challenge to his authority. Carroll saw Rob as someone who didn't just have artistic differences, but who carried himself with an air of superiority that made collaboration nearly impossible. It wasn't just about acting choices, it was about attitude, about respect, about the dynamic between cast members. Rob was arrogant and insufferable, Carroll would later say, painting a picture of a young actor who questioned everything, who challenged interpretations, who seemed to believe his understanding of the show's message was somehow more valid than anyone else's. What made this feud even more painful for Carroll was the complete absence of personal connection. Some co-stars who disagree professionally still manage to develop friendships off-camera. They share meals, tell jokes, support each other through difficult times. But Carroll and Rob? Nothing. "There was never a moment when I felt like Rob was my friend," Carroll recalled. "He was always out to prove something, always competing for attention in ways I found exhausting." Imagine being at work every day with someone you not only dislike, but actively feel is undermining you. Every scene became a battle. Every take carried the weight of their mutual hostility. Carroll felt isolated, constantly on guard, having to defend not just his character choices, but his professional worth against what he perceived as Rob's relentless challenges.
but the personal dislike was compounded by a deeper philosophical clash. Archie Bunker was a nuanced character, requiring careful, layered interpretation. Carroll worked hard to make Archie three-dimensional, prejudiced but not purely evil, ignorant but not without moments of wisdom, stubborn but capable of love. Rob Reiner's character, Michael Meathead Stivic, was Archie's ideological opposite, young, liberal, educated, progressive. And according to Carroll, Rob approached the role with such heavy-handed righteousness that it turned their scenes into moral lectures rather than genuine dramatic exchanges. "It wasn't about acting," said Carroll bitterly. "It was about him trying to teach me a lesson every day about liberal versus conservative, right versus wrong. I'm an actor, not a preacher." This fundamental disagreement about approach made every day on set an ordeal. Carroll felt he was constantly navigating Rob's impulses while trying to stay true to Archie's essence, all while dealing with someone he found personally insufferable. Despite these intense feelings, Carroll rarely let his hatred explode on camera. His professionalism was too ingrained, his commitment to the show too strong. He ensured that while he and Rob couldn't stand each other personally, their on-screen chemistry remained compelling. And here's the strange irony. Their real-life tension might have actually enhanced the authenticity of Archie and Michael's contentious relationship. The barely concealed animosity, the way they seemed genuinely irritated by each other, audiences read it as brilliant acting, never knowing it was largely genuine feeling, barely contained by professional obligation. But off-camera, Carroll never softened. Even years later, even after All in the Family had secured its place in television history, Carroll maintained his position. "I've worked with many people I couldn't stand, but Rob topped them all, more than anyone, ever." This feud reveals something important about Carroll O'Connor. He was a man of intense passions, capable of tremendous love and equally powerful hatred. He was fiercely protective of his artistic integrity, unwilling to compromise when he felt his professional authority was being challenged. He demanded respect, and when he felt that respect wasn't given, he didn't forget, didn't forgive, didn't pretend for the sake of appearances. The public saw Archie Bunker, sometimes cantankerous but ultimately lovable. Behind the scenes, Carroll O'Connor revealed himself as someone just as complex as the characters he played. Capable of profound devotion, but equally capable of sustained resentment when he felt wronged.
On June 21, 2001, at the age of 76, Carroll O'Connor's remarkable journey came to an end in Culver City, California. The immediate cause was a heart attack, but the underlying issue was diabetes, a disease he'd battled for years, one that had steadily weakened his cardiovascular system despite his fighting spirit. His passing marked the end of a genuine era in American television. Carroll O'Connor wasn't just an actor, he was a cultural force who had used his platform to challenge, to provoke, to make people think differently about themselves and their country. Carroll was laid to rest at Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles, joining other Hollywood legends in that prestigious resting place. But what made his grave particularly poignant was a touching detail. A cenotaph honoring his son, Hugh, was placed on Carroll's gravestone. Even in death, Carroll ensured his beloved son was remembered, that their bond was memorialized for anyone who visited. It was a father's love expressed in stone, a permanent reminder that beneath all the fame and success and legendary performances was a man who had experienced profound loss and never stopped honoring his son's memory. So, who was Carroll O'Connor, really? He was a brilliant actor who gave us one of television's most iconic characters. He was a dedicated craftsman who refused to take the easy route, who insisted on finding the humanity even in the most challenging roles. He was a devoted father who turned unbearable tragedy into meaningful advocacy, potentially saving lives through his willingness to speak openly about addiction. But he was also a man capable of intense hatred, someone who held grudges and never pretended otherwise. He was proud, sometimes difficult, and unwilling to compromise when he felt his artistic integrity was at stake. He was complicated in the same way his most famous character was complicated, full of contradictions, capable of both great warmth and surprising coldness. That's what made Carroll O'Connor so remarkable.
He was never one-dimensional, never simple, never predictable. He brought that same complexity to every role, every relationship, every aspect of his life. His work on All in the Family changed television forever, proving that comedy could tackle serious social issues without losing its entertainment value. His advocacy after Hugh's death helped countless families understand and confront addiction. His later work demonstrated that even legendary actors can successfully reinvent themselves. Carroll O'Connor's story reminds us that the people we see on screen are never the whole picture. Behind every performance is a complete human being, with triumphs and tragedies, loves and hatreds, moments of grace and moments of pettiness. What do you think made Carroll O'Connor such a compelling actor? Was it his willingness to embrace complex, controversial characters, his refusal to simplify human nature, or was it something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective on this complicated legend. If you found this deep dive into Carroll O'Connor's life fascinating, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're exploring the untold stories behind Hollywood's biggest icons, revealing the real people behind the legendary performances. Trust me, there are plenty more shocking revelations coming your way. And if you want to understand how television reflected and shaped American culture during its golden age, check out our video on Norman Lear's revolutionary vision, the man who created All in the Family and changed TV forever. The link is right up there in the cards. Thanks for watching, and remember, the most interesting stories are usually the ones nobody tells. Until next time, keep questioning what you think you know about your favorite stars.